Hello there, kia ora, and welcome to this week's The News. Last Friday, name suppression was lifted after convicted sexual offender Tim Jago, seen here talking about how victim culture is a problem, stopped ongoing attempts to retain it after his conviction. David Seymour, Snapchatter of school kids seen here in a shirt depicting naked woman at a university event that objectified women, claimed that there was no way for the ACT Party to know what the actions of Jago was before he was president, a position he took up nearly 20 years after the initial police investigations, into which Jago's actions were then put on police record, and despite approaches from one of the victims 3 months before charges were laid, a stance which has been defended by a range of men who felt downplaying the crimes was the right move to make, including ACT Party proxy, founder of the Taxpayer Union and Curia Polling, David Farrer, pictured here dressed as convicted sex offender Jimmy Savile. Jago is now the second ACT Party president to have been investigated by police after Gary Mallett was referred to police for campaign finance issues. ACT Party MP Nicole McKee, seen here Googling the best places to hide your illegal firearms, has made calls for Wellington City Council to drop reference to the Treaty of Waitangi in job listings for senior management of Wellington Water. She claims the acknowledgement of Te Tiriti is surplus to the job that should be focusing on fixing water pipes. And while the settlements of Ngāti Toa and Taranaki Whānui both have strong connections to how Wellington Water does its job, the fact that Wellington Water is a CCO owned by multiple councils and a separate entity from each of them, and therefore not under the purview of Wellington City Council, is completely beside the point when the aim is clearly to make the treaty part of their culture war. On Saturday, Health Minister Simeon Brown released footage of himself undergoing a routine blood pressure check as part of his new role as the Minister of Health. No word yet on if the results conclusively proved he was completely heartless or simply just not a good person. US Senator Ted Cruz has been corrected by Foreign Affairs Minister Winston Peters over a misleading claim about Israeli immigration requirements based on a fake news report. Said Peters, "I'm shocked at this careless claim from Cruz. I thought he'd like us better after we started calling for Mexicans to be deported." The Minister of Social Development, seen here with a sorted state house beneficiary, this week announced two new non-financial sanctions against beneficiaries that they claim are not meeting their requirements when asking for help from our social welfare safety net. The latest employment data shows the number of jobs available in Aotearoa dropped by 35,000 over the last year as the country entered the worst recession since the early 90s, with an increase of unemployed people up to 144,500. And clearly punishing people for there being not enough jobs for everyone is the way to fix this issue. According to quarterly data on wastewater testing results, police are saying that the winner in the war on drugs is cocaine. The most recent round of wastewater tests showed that cocaine was overtaking MDMA as the drug of choice for New Zealanders, especially in Auckland, the Bay of Plenty, and the southern regions. Experts in drug-related harm say societal changes that increase stress, like increased costs, housing impermanence, and the lack of access to healthcare, can cause addictions to worsen. So I'm sure things will improve really, really soon. On Monday, it was revealed by media that the government had yet to set up a procurement process to find replacement ferries for the ones that they cancelled to pay for tax cuts for landlords. So naturally, Tuesday, the government announced that they had started the process to find shipbuilders to deliver the replacements by 2029, which coincidentally will be 4 years after when the first IREX ferry was supposed to be here. But we still had to pay for tax cuts. New numbers released by the police show that the number of threats made towards politicians has decreased significantly under the current government. Sociologists have put this down to a number of factors, like misogyny not being as prominent without a woman in charge, and the lack of lightning rod issues like vaccines and mandates, which led to the illegal occupation of Parliament in 2022 and the highest rate of recorded threats. However, this term also saw the largest ever protest on Parliament grounds, which did not see the number of threats increase. It's almost like the alt-right nutjobs, the sort who raised political funds after threatening minorities and who felt it was fine to threaten politicians, got exactly what they wanted in Parliament. Treasury has warned the government this week that tight budgets currently in place and expected in the future will only be met by a reduction in public services. Oh, wait. Is this from last year? It's from Tuesday. Okay, let's try that again. Treasury has warned shit's about to get even worse than it is now, but the public shouldn't worry. Those who have fled the country by then will have had their tax cuts for a year and surely have dragged themselves out of poverty by budget day. A new Talbot Mills poll released on Tuesday continued the trend of other polls released so far this year, with the Labour Party having a lead on the National Party, a left-leaning bloc being able to return to power if an election was held today, New Zealand first within the margin of error for crossing the MMP threshold, and Chris Hipkins regaining the preferred Prime Minister spot, said the NZ Herald. ACT Party MP Nicole McKee, seen here showing Santa what she wants in every child's stocking next Christmas, has written to the Real Estate Authority Board in her capacity as Associate Minister for Justice to lodge her disapproval of a court finding against real estate agent and Hobson's Pledge poster girl Janet Dixon, whose request for a judicial review into losing her licence because she refused to undertake a compulsory training course on the role of te tiriti or Waitangi as part of her legal obligations to retain her licence was thrown out of court this week. In her letter, McKee said it was important for her that the board prove that their services materially improve outcomes for all New Zealanders. Well, all New Zealanders who support ACT. The course that Dixon refused to do was a broad 90-minute overview of Māori culture, language, and te tiriti, and she claimed in court this was because she felt the course was a breach of her rights of free speech, which the court dismissed, saying at no point does learning to be more culturally aware constitute having your free speech stopped. Well, except within the ranks of Hobson's Pledge. The latest employment data released by Stats NZ on Wednesday showed unemployment has continued to grow, with the official rate now at 5.1%, the steepest increase in unemployment since 2009, a year into the premiership of John Key, but I'm sure that's just a total coincidence. Men were the hardest hit in this decline, as manufacturing, trade, and labouring jobs are the hardest hit industries. This quarter also contributed to seeing a slowing in wage growth and an increase of 8,000 young people out of work or education. There are currently 20,000 jobs on the job site Seek, with an unemployed population of almost 150,000. So the Prime Minister's advice was to polish up your CV and go door knocking, or you'll face harsher benefit sanctions, because that's how you get the country back on track. Mana Whenua at Waitangi on Wednesday undertook a peaceful protest when ACT leader and the man responsible for feeding kids food worse than what convicted sex offender Tim Jago gets in prison started to speak on the paipai by turning their backs to him and singing the Waiata Proud to be Māori. Twice during his speech, a matua crossed the paipai and removed his microphone because Seymour's own iwi had asked he stay away, and he disrespected that request from them by showing up and using the same speaking points abusers use on their victims. Don't worry if you missed it though. Mainstream media has already provided David Seymour multiple front-page opportunities to complain and whistle to his followers and offer his perspective, while only one story seems to have appeared about Chris Hipkins even being at the event. During Waitangi commemorations this week, Te Pāti Māori have called for the creation of a treaty commissioner with the power to veto bills that are directly in violation of the treaty. Responding to this on the platform, David Seymour said he would leave the country if a left-leaning coalition put this in place. Labour leader Chris Hipkins has ruled out the possibility of Labour agreeing to this in coalition talks, said 92% of voters and children have been forced to eat these all week. Please reconsider. Hipkins says he prefers instead to hope that the threat that Seymour keeps his word from an interview in Women's Weekly that he would give up politics for love as he announced his engagement on Waitangi Day in a totally not an attempt to overshadow the national holiday, the reception to his Waitangi speech, or his former party president's recent naming in a sexual assault case. Speaking of food worse than what Tim Jago is getting in prison this week, issues continue around the supply of school lunches, with schools still reporting unappetizing food and late deliveries. One teacher even reported finding a human hair in their meal. Said Compass Group, the contractor for the new program, "We understand these issues have been frustrating, but they're just kids who aren't meant to have phones so can't take photos. So who'll even notice?" In Porneki, local media outlet Bitter Wellington, a local right-wing blog site that demands Wellingtonians take back the city from the, quote, woke lefty council, was called out for spreading disinformation about bike lanes after posting an image from a bus of a cyclist not using what they claim is a readily available lane. Images of the site at another angle clearly show the lane starts after the bus stop the photo was taken from. The writer of the content is expected to take up a position at the Post's anti-cycle lane department by the end of the month. On Friday morning, Health NZ CEO Margie Upper, seen here with a dangerous-looking growth that has doctors concerned, resigned from her position. In a statement released by the Health Minister Simeon Brown, where he takes a dig at the previous government, he notes Upper was due to finish her term in June and has chosen to get the fuck out of Dodge. Make space for a new leader to continue the reset of Health NZ. For those that are unsure what is meant by a reset, here it's a technical term for burning it all to the ground, sowing that ground with salt, then pouring acid over the ground, contaminating it with nuclear waste and making sure that the staff all have Milo. And finally, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, seen here practicing the Kubrick stare, has lashed out at banks for choosing to evolve their business practices away from supporting fossil fuel industries over the next few years. In a heated conversation with some rich white guy at News Talk, Luxon called it utterly unacceptable that some banks were withdrawing their services. 4 times he used the word unacceptable, in fact, claiming CEOs needed to listen to him because he's incredibly frustrated right now and losing his patience. When asked his thoughts on defending the rights of Māori or women, he responded with, "Look, what I'm saying to you is, banks need to listen to us now." And that is this week's The News. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.